Welcome to RichPlanet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. Let's start with an update. I'm in the process of producing a third Madeleine McCann film, which will examine the timeline of events in the days before Madeleine McCann was reported missing, with the intention of shedding light on what really did happen. It is my opinion, which is shared by thousands of others, that something significant happened to Madeleine before she was reported missing, possibly days before, which prompted those involved to fabricate an abduction scenario. If this is true, then only by looking very carefully at all of the evidence before she was reported missing will we shed light on what most likely happened. This is important because the real facts, it seems, have been actively covered up with the help of British establishment organisations such as Scotland Yard, the BBC and many others. I'm not exactly sure when the film will be ready, but I will make an announcement on the website in due course. I said earlier this year that I intended to start a project which would look into the claims of over-unity devices, sometimes referred to as free energy devices or vacuum energy devices or perpetual motion machines. The goal of the project is to build one or more of these devices and to carry out testing to see if any of the claims are true. I've had a very good response, and last week we held the first project meeting in Birmingham, attended by 10 engineers. Now, people keep asking me, when will RichPlanet be back on television? There are two main obstacles to this. The first is down to funding or sponsorship. If you have deep pockets and want to sponsor future shows, then please get in touch. The second is down to content. I would estimate that I've now produced around 15 hours or more of television content which the TV broadcasters have refused to air. This includes the Madeleine McCann films and the Cumbria Shootings film Patsy Driver. Therefore, in order to be on television, I would need to make different content. Being on television does still reach more viewers than online. A significant number of viewers still watch programs only on television and not on the internet, although this is slowly changing. So you can see, when it comes to television, it is a trade-off between softening the content and getting more viewers, which really pisses me off. Anyway, I'm intending to make a series of 12 more shows which I would like to put out before the end of the year, some of which may be screened on TV if we get a sponsor. Now, you might remember that I carried out an investigation into the disappearance of 1,500 sheep from a field in Lincolnshire in 2011. You can watch the programme from this link. There have recently been two more occurrences of very large numbers of sheep disappearing in Lincolnshire. One from a farm near Melton Ross in June this year, where 600 were alleged to have disappeared in a single night, and a further 300 in late July from a field at Beckingham Ranges in Lincolnshire. I have been to both these locations recently to investigate the incidents and will be reporting on what I have found in September in my lecture at the UFO Truth Conference in Holmfirth, Yorkshire, organised by former detective Gary Heseltine. The fact I am speaking about this evidence at a UFO conference does not mean I am claiming these cases are UFO related. What I have found so far is very intriguing, and would just say that from evidence that I've unearthed of the three cases, there could be different motives behind each one. I suspect somebody is trying to muddy the waters. I'll be speaking about this and other research on Saturday the 19th of September if you want to find out more. My attention was recently drawn to these statues, which were put up in Berlin in May this year. The statues pay homage to the three supposed whistleblowers, Julian Assange, Edward Snowden and Bradley Manning. Now, if you believe these chaps are real whistleblowers, then I suggest you go and do a bit more homework. Now, in the run-up to 9/11, CIA asset Osama bin Laden was on the CIA's most wanted list. This is because the public's minds were being prepared to accept who did 9/11 in advance of the event. As pointed out by Bill Cooper, a guy from CNN just waltzes into Osama bin Laden's cave and interviews him. The point being, if a news reporter knows where to find Osama bin Laden, how come he has not been caught by the CIA?
supposedly a CNN reporter found Osama bin Laden, took a television camera crew with him, went into Osama bin Laden's hideout, interviewed him and his top leadership, his top lieutenants and colonels and generals in their hideout. Now, don't you think that's kind of strange, folks? You see, because the largest intelligence apparatus in the world, with the biggest budget in the history of the world, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years, and can't find him. Some doofus, jerk-off reporter with a camera crew waltzes right into his hideout and interviews him. Now, that tells us two things. Either everyone in the intelligence community and all of the intelligence agencies of the United States government are blithering idiots and incompetent fools, including the entire apparatus of the FBI and all of their personnel, or they're lying to us. They're not looking for him at all.
This is very reminiscent to me of Ed Snowden's situation, who was supposedly living in temporary asylum in Russia to evade capture by the Americans, who supposedly want to arrest him for espionage charges. If you believe that, you really will believe anything. How is it possible for a British comedian to find Ed Snowden in Russia and interview him? Don't you think the CIA would have found him first, even if he is in Russia? Do you really think the Russian government is protecting Snowden? It is all theatre, and of course the Russians are compliant with the script. As Lenin once said, the best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves, and that is exactly what the CIA are doing with Assange and Snowden. They are not whistleblowers, they are actors. Julian Assange has actually stated that there was no conspiracy involved in 9/11. You heard that right, folks. No conspiracy with 9/11. If you ever visit Berlin, please make sure you take a dog with you so you can let it piss on these statues. They are a joke. Assange was even given a TV show on the disinformation news channel Russia Today, which is now a cesspit of half-truths and diversion, clearly being made by the West for the West. As far as I am aware, Assange is not wanted by the US government at all, but the media does everything to make you think he is in order to raise his profile, and also uses actors holding up CIA posters to fool people into thinking this is a real issue. Now, speaking of subversive fake heroes and role models, and of 9/11, Cox. If you see Brian Cox, please ask him if he has looked at the information he was given earlier this year, which was information about the most important book written this century, Where Did the Towers Go?, by former Professor of Engineering Mechanics, Dr. Judy Wood. And here is a photograph of his office in Manchester, which proves he has been informed. Now, many people asked me to comment on the recent terrorist incidents, particularly in Tunisia. Here is my response. After looking in quite a lot of detail at high-profile purported terrorist or criminal incidents such as 9/11, 7/7, Woolwich, Sandy Hook, the Cumbria shootings, etc., etc., it is now clear to me that it is impossible to know the truth by watching TV news reports. I would go as far as to say that mainstream media are used to create a narrative that their controllers desire, which involves naming and demonizing the supposed enemy, who are usually, in fact, patsies. Because of these past very detailed investigations into these cases, I would ask, why would Tunisia be any different? However, I will not comment on what is alleged to have happened in Tunisia, because it is my belief now that those who are manipulating mainstream media are also placing bogus clues in their media reports with the intention of fooling those who know the official story is incorrect. In other words, the group which sees through the lies of these kind of events must be, at the very least, misled into buying a second fake narrative. My experience has taught me that in order to get closest to the truth, You must go to the scene yourself. You must speak to first-hand witnesses yourself. You must find first-hand evidence yourself. You cannot unravel these incidents by looking for clues in mainstream media reports. All this does is give you a pair of shiny pants. Now, if anyone wants to pay my airfare and expenses to go to Tunisia, I will investigate the incident. But until I go there, I will not get sucked into commenting on mainstream media bullshit. I suspect that both Sandy Hook and Woolwich, for example, had fake clues planted by mainstream media in order to mislead those who know the media is not feeding them the truth. Now, one lone gunman case I can comment on, however, is the Derek Bird case, which I have investigated comprehensively. There was at least one other gunman involved in the Cumbria shootings, and I firmly believe that Bird was under mind control throughout most of the events. Please watch the film if you haven't already seen it. So, the only comment I would make in relation to Tunisia is it is certainly possible that multiple gunmen and mind control were involved. In the past, I have spoken about alleged secret underground bases and tunnels underneath the UK, and there are rumours about undisclosed facilities in Hampshire, in Berkshire, and in Wiltshire, and in many other counties. I have been informed by two independent, reliable sources of a secret underground facility just outside Merthyr Tydfil. This is alleged to be next to a large disused gas tank known as Bavistocks. The facility is alleged to be on the opposite side of the A465 and is ostensibly a water pumping station. But two independent people have given me witness testimony of there being a secret bunker at this site. Now, I've also had information about an incident which happened at Ebbw Vale, at the Tesco car park of all places. Apparently, construction work was being carried out there, and by accident, workers came across a massive underground tunnel heading in the direction of Merthyr Tydfil, about 8 miles away as the crow flies. If this is true, then does this tunnel lead to the alleged secret facility near Merthyr Tydfil? Another interesting observation is if you draw a straight line from Bavistocks through Ebbw Vale Tesco car park and continue the line, it comes out, give or take a few hundred yards, at GCHQ in Cheltenham. This raises another question. Is there a 60-mile long secret tunnel from GCHQ in Cheltenham to Merthyr Tydfil? If anyone has any information, please get in touch. A few months back, I was contacted by a viewer who discovered a strange tiny object embedded in his elbow. His email read, "In late August last year, 2014, I became very ill with what I thought was a frozen shoulder and neck pain. This also floored me physically and mentally for 6 weeks, and even morphine did not put a dent in the physical pain I was in during this time. I have had this once before in June 2006, but this was worse, a lot worse. I thought this was dragging on a bit, but to be honest, did not think anything sinister was going on, until about 4 weeks later, I noticed the back of my elbow was bleeding onto my shorts while watching television. When I felt the area, I could feel something sticking out, like what we call in Scotland a skelf or a wood splinter. I nipped the item, pulled it out, and put pressure on it with my thumbnail and index finger. It crunched like glass, which I thought was strange. Anyway, I discarded it, thinking it was a sting of some sort, but it was bugging me enough to go to the doctor again, with whom I shared the story. She inspected the area and noticed the small red mark, which is still there today, and asked me if I'd been anywhere tropical lately, which I had not. Her opinion was I had been stung with something exotic, and the toxin had got into the nerve inside the elbow and spread up and down my arm and sickened me in the process. Sounds plausible, but I don't know of any insect in this country or other countries that stings and leaves an object like a glass splinter way deep inside the elbow. It had to be fairly deep inside to hit the nerve, and if it was a bee sting, I would have felt it. Now at that time I got a blood test for something unrelated, and all they noticed was my liver was showing signs of alcohol stress, which is strange as I no longer drink alcohol. A few weeks later, a subsequent blood test showed vast improvement, which made me more dubious about this whole saga. One more thing I noticed was what are called Mies lines on my fingernails. These lines are nearly grown out now, but are still noticeable. If you have any insights into what this could or might have been, I would like your view on this. Now, that email was in January this year, 2015, talking about what had occurred to him starting in August 2014. Then, in June this year, I got another email from the same viewer, and he said, "I sent you a message a few months ago about a foreign object that expelled itself from what I thought was a bite that poisoned me for weeks. Well, it has happened again. Only this time I kept the object and have photographed it. It looks like a stinger, but also looks like it has a metallic tip with an organic tailpiece. The object this time was found in the back of the viewer's thigh. I asked the viewer to send me the object and I had it examined under a microscope. I would be very interested to know if anyone knows what this object could be." The viewer explained in an earlier email that "I've been sickened badly by these objects twice now. It starts as a small cyst about the size of a pea and erupts into a large boil or carbuncle after a few weeks, which I had to get lanced and drained on the 4th of April at A&E. Last night the still slightly tender boil area started bleeding, and on closer inspection the thing is working its way out just like last time, and here it is." Now, the viewer then went to their doctor and took the object with them to see if the doctor could identify it. He wrote, "I went to the doctor and showed her a photograph of the item. I even brought the thing with me and a magnifier and asked if she wanted to look through the magnifier at the object, but she did not take the opportunity to do that. But she did look at the photograph. I told her what had happened and she is convinced it is a sting of some sort and could not be anything else. She did not want to get the object tested as she was worried it would get sent back with a cheeky letter from the lab about time wasting. So much for scientific inquiry. I feel she was perplexed and genuinely intrigued, but dismissive. She did manage to slip in a comment that aliens are not coming down to implant things into my body, which tells me the object stirred something of that nature in her to make that comment. I mentioned nothing about my suspicions and nothing about aliens, etc., only that I felt it looked like an unnatural object that has made me ill and I felt it should be tested. She suggested getting my home and bed fumigated with insecticide. So if you know what this object might be, please get in touch." Now then, many viewers will be familiar with researcher Dr. Nick Colostrom, whose book Terror on the Tube, Behind the Veil of 7/7 looks in detail at what happened in the 2005 London bombings and demonstrates clearly that the events were fabricated by authorities and the alleged bombers were patsies taking part in a terror drill. Now, his latest book is entitled Breaking the Spell, The Holocaust, Myth and Reality, and examines evidence from the Second World War attempting to explain what really happened at the Nazi concentration camps. His conclusions are in stark contrast with the widely accepted narratives about the Holocaust. For example, he claims the total number killed was nowhere near 6 million, as is usually claimed, and that no prisoners were killed using gas chambers. Now, I'm not saying here whether I agree or disagree with Nick Colostrom. I wasn't there at the time. Nick Colostrom does include evidence in his book to back up his claims, but if you have evidence to refute Dr. Nick Colostrom's claims, please send the evidence to me. Or perhaps you would like to take part in a debate with Nick Colostrom on this issue for a future TV show. Needless to say, I don't think that one will be allowed on telly. A few years ago, I met up with Nick Colostrom at Cambridge and joined him for a nostalgic visit to his old university where he studied as an undergraduate. Right, I'm with Nick Colostrom and we're in Cambridge and he's come to visit his old college.
This is at the back of Corpus Christi now, and we're just coming up to the Whipple Museum, which is History and Philosophy Science Department, where I majored.
Will they recognise you from all those years ago? What's this building, Nick? Corpus Christi.
Yeah, so the library here, priceless ancient manuscripts. Yeah.
Bring back memories?
Stressful memories.
Stressful memories. Is that exam stress or personal stress?
Both, I think. Something I feel I didn't enjoy it as much as I could have done. We're coming now to the dinner hall.
So just remind us what you studied here at Cambridge, Nick.
Oh, I took natural science tripos, majored in history and philosophy science. Yeah, so here we have where Marlowe, I think Marlowe lived here at some point, Elizabethan playwright. Right, now we're going to wander through the back entrance of Corpus Christi College out into the Eagle pub. This is the famous pub where Crick and Watson, when they discovered DNA in the molecule of life, that they went into this pub to tell everyone about it. Okay, so we're just coming out the back entrance of Corpus now, and here's this fabled pub, the Eagle. And I had a room up here once on the ceiling. That lovely ancient woodwork here. That's where people first heard about the molecule of life.
Well, the first in modern times, Nick.
First in modern times?
In modern times,
oh, right.
Yeah. You know, there are rumours that the ancients knew about DNA.
Well, perhaps might bring you here this evening, Richard. Let's go into the student's room.
Student's room. I guess things have changed a bit since, what year would it have been?
I know, back in the late 60s.
Right, just tell us where we are here, Nick. We're in the car and we've gone to a different part of Cambridge.
Yeah. Well, this was the last gasp of Britain's Royal Greenwich Observatory before it's closed down with a swing of Margaret Thatcher's handbag. An act of real cultural vandalism.
Turn left.
Britain no longer has its Royal Greenwich Observatory, but this is where it was finally situated. And this Cambridge Observatory is also to do with the discovery of the planet Neptune.
Right.
When the Brits put in a bid for co-predicting Neptune,
and what year was
happened around that?
What year was Neptune?
Oh, that was around about 1846. And so it all happened here.
Right. Several thousand years after the Sumerians discovered it. Apparently, there's been a release. This 30-year ruling thing. There was some documents released about the Falklands.
Yeah.
And do you think there might be documents here which nobody has seen, which you can now get access to, perhaps, or?
Well, we can go and see the Tam Daniel archives, which are supposed to be at Churchill College, but they haven't. We're rather disturbed. They haven't released them for at least 3 years since he gave them to them, and they've got controversial stuff in it that the government might want to keep quiet. In this library archive, Tam Daniel, the old Labour MP, gave all his documents, vital documents about the Falklands War and sinking the Belgrano, and he was really Britain's expert on the subject, and his archives are crucial for whatever really happened, how Britain precipitated that war by sinking the old Belgrano. And to my knowledge, the Archive Centre has had all Tam Daniel stuff for a good 3 years now and hasn't made it public all the times we've asked them previously. So now we're going to see one more time.
Believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see.
So that was a brush off, really.
Okay.
After 3 years, they still haven't put any of the stuff out.
Okay.
I suspect they're waiting until he's died, so that nobody can ask him any awkward questions.
Welcome to RichPlanet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. Let's start with an update. I'm in the process of producing a third Madeleine McCann film, which will examine the timeline of events in the days before. A significant number of viewers still watch programs only on television and not on the internet, although this is slowly changing. So you can see, when it comes to television, it is a trade-off between softening the content and getting more viewers, which really pisses me off. Anyway, I'm intending to make a series of 12 more shows, which I would like to put out before the end of the year, some of which may be screened on TV if we get a sponsor. Now, you might remember that I carried out an investigation into the disappearance of 1,500 sheep from a field in Lincolnshire in 2011. You can watch the programme asking me, when will RichPlanet be back on television? There are two main obstacles to this. The first is down to funding or sponsorship. If you have deep pockets and want to sponsor future shows, then please get in touch. The second is down to content. I would estimate that I've now produced around 15 hours or more of television content which the TV broadcasters have refused to air. This includes the Madeleine McCann films and the Cumbria Shootings film Patsy Driver. Therefore, in order to be on television, I would need to make different content. Being on television does still reach more viewers than online, the BBC and many others. I'm not exactly sure when the film will be ready, but I will make an announcement on the website in due course. I said earlier this year that I intended to start a project which would look into the claims of over-unity devices, sometimes referred to as free energy devices or vacuum energy devices or perpetual motion machines. The goal of the project is to build one or more of these devices and to carry out testing to see if any of the claims are true. I've had a very good response, and last week we held the first project meeting in Birmingham attended by 10 engineers. Now, people keep asking Madeleine McCann was reported missing, with the intention of shedding light on what really did happen. It is my opinion, which is shared by thousands of others, that something significant happened to Madeleine before she was reported missing, possibly days before, which prompted those involved to fabricate an abduction scenario. If this is true, then only by looking very carefully at all of the evidence before she was reported missing will we shed light on what most likely happened. This is important because the real facts, it seems, have been actively covered up with the help of British establishment organisations such as Scotland Yard